All right, today we're tackling a real constitutional puzzle, one that asks a pretty mind-bending question about who gets to hold the ultimate power in the United States. Let's jump right in.
So here's the question that kicks this all off. Just think about this for a second. Can a person who is legally barred from voting, let's say because of a felony conviction, or maybe they've been declared mentally incompetent, can that person still become president? Is it possible for someone who a state says is unfit to even cast a ballot to be fit to lead the entire country? That's the paradox we're going to explore.
Okay, so to even begin to unravel this, we've got to go back to basics. The whole argument really comes down to how we understand one single core idea: representation. What does it actually mean for someone to represent the people?
Now, this whole thing hinges on a very specific idea of what representation is. It's not just about somebody acting for you. It's about someone from among you acting on behalf of everyone. True representation, according to this argument, demands shared membership. You can't be the delegate for a club if you're not actually a member of that club. Yeah, and this slide really nails it. A president is supposed to be one of we the people, just elevated to a leadership role. They're not some kind of external CEO hired to manage the country. The idea is that they are a delegate from within the political community, not an outsider who was just installed to run it.
So the logic here is actually pretty straightforward. It's just two steps. First, when a state disenfranchises someone, takes away their right to vote, it's legally cutting them off from the political community. And step two just flows right from them. If you've been kicked out of the group, you can't represent that group anymore. You just can't be the spokesperson for a community that has legally told you you're not allowed to speak.
Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. The biggest, most obvious objection to this whole idea has to do with what the Constitution doesn't say. So let's just tackle that one head on.
And yep, there it is, the classic argument from silence. People will point out that the Constitution lists qualifications. You have to be 35, a natural-born citizen, and so on, but it says absolutely nothing about needing to have the right to vote. So that's it, right? Game over? Well, not quite.
This is where things get really interesting, because the counter-argument is that silence in the Constitution doesn't just mean anything goes. Instead, it points to these really deep background assumptions, the kind of stuff the framers just took for granted, so much so that they probably never even thought they had to write it down. I mean, seriously, think about it. Does the Constitution explicitly state that the president has to be alive, or conscious, or legally sane? No, of course not. But we all just understand that these things are fundamental. They are such basic prerequisites for the job that they're just assumed.
And that's the whole point. The argument is that the right to vote belongs in that same exact category of unwritten foundational rules. Voting isn't just some random activity. It's seen as the absolute minimum, the most basic act that defines you as a political person, as a member of we the people.
So if we accept that, it leads us right to the heart of the contradiction here, this massive difference between actually representing the people and simply being installed in an office. Look at this comparison. On one side, you have representation. It's about being one of the people, sharing their political status. On the other, you have installation, which is just about being chosen by the people. The first is a structural identity. The second is just a procedure, a process that could, in theory, pick almost anyone.
And this is where it all becomes completely absurd, right? If a non-voter can be president, the system is saying two opposite things at the same time. It's saying this person is so incapable of sound judgment that they can't even fill out a ballot. And also, this person is perfectly capable of holding the highest political authority in the land. It just doesn't make sense.
But there is another counter-argument, a slightly more sophisticated one, that involves the idea of federalism, that split between state power and federal power. Let's see how that one stacks up.
So this argument basically says, hey, what a state decides about voting is their business. It doesn't apply at the federal level. But just look at the bizarre legal split personality that creates. At home, in their own state, this person is officially a political non-entity. But on the national stage, they're suddenly the supreme political agent. The system is treating them as two completely opposite things at once.
And really, the argument here is that this isn't just a weird quirk. It's a fundamental break in the system's logic. A coherent legal system just can't hold up when you have such a massive contradiction right at its core. The whole idea of representation falls apart if the representative doesn't even share the most basic political status as the people they're supposed to represent.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway? What's the point of this whole thought experiment? Well, it's not actually about a single rule. It's about the logic of the entire constitutional system. And this is maybe the most crucial thing to understand. This isn't an argument to go in and rewrite the Constitution. It's a legal argument that says we might be reading the text in a way that completely ignores its own internal logic, its own foundational assumptions.
Really, what this is a challenge to how we even think about the Constitution. It's a stress test. It forces us to ask whether our interpretation of the rules actually makes sense when you step back and look at the whole system and how it's supposed to fit together. And so that leaves us with this one big question. When we look at the Constitution, are we looking at just a list of separate rules that we're supposed to follow literally? Or are we looking at an interconnected system, a framework of logic, where every single part has to make sense with all the others? Because how you answer that, well, that changes just about everything.